In Lagos, 3 expectant mothers set out on ordinary days, but none of them came home. Weeks later, their coffins appeared side by side in a quiet cemetery, dressed in white, their hands resting on their unborn children. It should have ended there, but one detective saw something others missed and uncovered a chain of events so shocking it would change lives forever. So, sit back, relax, and watch till the end. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating tales. It started quietly. Too quietly. On a humid Tuesday evening in Ajagunle, Ngozi, a 26-year-old expectant mother, waved goodbye to her husband, Chika, as she stepped into a tricycle. She was going for her antenatal checkup at a private clinic just 2 streets away. She never came back. Chika waited all night, pacing in their small one-room apartment. By morning, he was at the clinic, his voice shaking. "I'm looking for my wife, Ngozi Chika. She was supposed to be here yesterday evening." The nurse at the front desk looked confused. "No pregnant woman by that name came here yesterday, sir." Chika's hands trembled. "But she called me when she got here. She said she was inside." The nurse shook her head. "Sir, our clinic closes by 6 p.m. No one came after that." 2 days later, in Surulere, Aisha, 32, left home to buy baby clothes. She was 8 months pregnant and excited. Her husband, Musa, remembered her smile when she left. He would never see that smile again. By the end of the week, in Ikeja, Kimi, a final year student, told her mother she was going to the hospital for a routine check. She promised to be back for dinner. She never returned. 3 women, 3 different neighborhoods, 3 different lives, but one terrifying pattern. Their families searched desperately, plastering posters on street poles, pleading on radio stations, visiting police stations every day. At first, the police said, maybe they ran away. Maybe they left on their own. Maybe the husbands are hiding something. But Chika, Musa, and Mama Kimi knew the truth. Their women would never just vanish. They were taken. 2 months later, the morning fog hung thick over Marble Hill Cemetery. The cemetery keeper, Baba Ibeji, opened the gates and froze. 3 fresh white coffins sat side by side, unburied. Inside each, Ngozi, Aisha, Kimi, all dressed in white lace, all with their hands resting on their swollen bellies. All gone. No visible injuries. Just gone. Chika fell to his knees when he saw her. His cries tore through the still morning air, each one sharp enough to break a heart. Detective Adora stood quietly, her chest heavy. She had seen death before, but this was different. This was deliberate. And somewhere, far away, a phone buzzed. A shadowy figure opened a message. The goods have arrived. Prepare the next batch. The smell of wet earth lingered in the cemetery as the police covered the coffins. Chika's shirt was soaked in sweat and tears. Musa stood frozen, his fists clenched so tightly that his nails dug into his palms. Mama Kimi was on the ground, rolling in grief, screaming her daughter's name until her voice cracked. Detective Adora watched them, not just as an officer, but as a woman. She could see the pain in their eyes, the disbelief, the way their chests rose and fell like the air itself had become poison. "Officer," Chika's voice trembled. "Who did this to my wife? She was healthy. She was happy. She was supposed to give birth in 2 weeks." Adeora's jaw tightened. "We don't know yet, but I promise you, we will find them." She meant every word, but deep inside, she knew this case was dangerous. Whoever was behind it had power. And power in Nigeria meant silence. That night, Adora sat at her desk going through missing persons files. Her pen stopped moving when she noticed something. The 3 women weren't the only ones. In the past year, 7 other pregnant women had gone missing in Lagos. All cases were still under investigation, but with no arrests, no leads, no noise. Meanwhile, in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, a group of men in black coats moved around quietly. On a table lay files, photographs, and hospital records of pregnant women. A man with a deep scar on his cheek, known only as Chief, stood at the head of the table. "These 3, he said, tapping the women's photos, were delivered on time. The clients are satisfied. Prepare the next shipment." Another man hesitated. "Chief, the police are starting to ask questions." Chief's eyes narrowed. "Then make sure the police stop asking. Permanently." Back in her small apartment, Adora received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was shaking. "If you want to know the truth about the pregnant women, meet me tomorrow at midnight, behind the old train station. Come alone." Before she could respond, the line went dead. Adora sat still, her heart pounding. She knew it could be a trap. But she also knew this might be the only way to find out what happened to Ngozi, Aisha, and Kimi. Outside, a car sat parked in the shadows, watching her window. Midnight in Lagos. The streets were quiet, except for the distant rumble of an Okada speeding past. Detective Adora stood in the shadows behind the old train station, her heart thudding in her chest. The air smelled of rust, dust, and something faintly rotten. She glanced at her watch. 12:04 a.m. "Where are you?" she whispered under her breath. A noise made her spin around. A figure emerged from the darkness, a man, thin and nervous, glancing over his shoulder every few seconds. "You came alone?" he asked. "Yes." "Who are you?" "My name doesn't matter. What matters is, I know who took those women." Adora stepped closer. "Tell me." The man swallowed hard. "I used to work for them, the people who run this operation. They are powerful, connected to hospitals, clinics, even police officers. They target poor pregnant women, take them away, and..." He stopped, his voice breaking. "And what?" Adora pressed. They sell the babies before they are even born. Rich clients abroad pay millions. The mothers don't survive the delivery." Adora felt her stomach twist. Her mind flashed to Ngozi, Aisha, and Kimi, their peaceful faces in the coffins, their unborn children gone. The man glanced around nervously. "I have proof. Records, names, payment slips, but if they know I talked to you, I'm dead." Before Adora could respond, the sound of tires screeching ripped through the night. 2 black SUVs appeared from nowhere, headlights blinding. The man's eyes widened in terror. "They found me." Gunshots shattered the silence. Adora grabbed his arm. "Run." They sprinted through the narrow alleys behind the train station. Bullets whizzed past, chipping concrete walls. Adeora's lungs burned, her legs aching, but she didn't stop. The man stumbled, clutching his side. Blood seeped through his shirt. "Go," he gasped. "Don't let them win. Find the file, under the floorboard, number 18, Ogunlana Street." Before Adora could pull him up, more shots rang out. The man went still. Adeora's hands shook as she closed his eyes. She ducked into the shadows, waiting for the SUVs to pass. By the time they were gone, the train station was silent again, except for the sound of Adeora's heartbeat pounding in her ears. She whispered to herself, "Ogunlana Street. I'll find you." Somewhere in the city, in a dimly lit room, Chief lit a cigar and made a phone call. "She's getting too close. Take care of her." The morning sun had barely risen when Detective Adora stood at the entrance of number 18, Ogunlana Street. It was an old, faded 2-story building, its walls peeling like tired skin. The street was quiet, except for a few hawkers selling akara and bread. She glanced around. No black SUVs. At least, not yet. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of dust and dampness. Old furniture sat in corners, covered with torn bedsheets. The wooden floor groaned with every step. She remembered the dying man's words. Under the floorboard, number 18. Her eyes scanned the ground until she noticed it, a section of the floor that looked newer than the rest. She knelt, pulling at the edge. It resisted at first, then gave way with a loud creak. Underneath was a small metal box. Her hands trembled as she lifted it out. She pried it open and froze. Inside were dozens of files, each labeled with a woman's name, photo, and medical record. Ngozi, Aisha, Kimi, and at least 20 other women she had never seen before. Each file had 2 disturbing stamps. Mother, deceased. Child, transferred. Adeora's throat tightened. Her fingers brushed against an envelope marked client payments. She opened it to reveal bank slips showing millions of naira in deposits, all linked to foreign accounts. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. Her heart jumped. She quickly stuffed the box back into the hole and replaced the floorboard. The footsteps grew louder, heavier. A man's voice called out from the darkness, cold and mocking. "You shouldn't be here, detective." She turned slowly. 2 tall men in black suits stood at the doorway, blocking her exit. Adeora's mind raced. She couldn't let them know she had seen the files. She forced a calm voice. "I'm investigating a complaint about this building. You gentlemen live here." They didn't answer. Instead, one of them stepped forward, his lips curling into a sinister smile. "Chief sends his regards." Before she could react, he swung a metal pipe toward her head. She ducked just in time, the pipe smashing into the wall. Adora ran, weaving through the dusty corridor. She burst out the back door, sprinting into the narrow alley. Her lungs screamed for air, but she didn't stop. By the time she reached her car, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely fit the key into the ignition. She started the engine and sped off, her heart still pounding. The metal box was still hidden in the floor, and she knew she had to come back for it. But now, Chief knew her name. And in his world, that meant she was already marked for death. Detective Adora sat opposite Inspector Henry, her superior, in his dimly lit office. The fan above them creaked slowly, filling the room with a lazy, irritating hum. She leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "Sir, I'm telling you, I saw the files myself. Number 18, Ogunlana Street. The names, the photos, the medical records. The box had proof these women were murdered. Proof the babies were stolen and sold." Henry raised an eyebrow, leaning back in his chair. "Adora, do you have the box?" Her jaw tightened. "No. I couldn't take it that night. I was almost killed." Henry sighed, drumming his fingers on the desk. "You expect me to start an official investigation based on your word alone? Lagos is full of rumors. If you want me to take this upstairs, I need evidence in my hands." Adeora's voice cracked with frustration. "Sir, these people are smart. They have connections. If we wait too long, the box will be gone." Henry looked at her with pity. "Adora, I think you're letting emotion cloud your judgment. Go home. Rest. We'll revisit this later." Outside the station, Adora sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. She felt like screaming. Every second that passed, the women's voices, the silent cry of Ngozi, Aisha, Kimi, echoed in her head. She knew Henry wouldn't move unless she brought him something solid. And that meant one thing: she had to get that box herself. But number 18 was no longer abandoned. She had driven past earlier and seen it, the front gate now guarded by 2 armed men, with a black SUV parked nearby. They were expecting her. She couldn't do it alone. That night, she called Chuka. He answered on the second ring, his voice heavy with grief. "Adora, have you found anything?" She took a deep breath. Chika, I think I know who took Ngozi. I found a box at number 18, Ogunlana Street with her file inside. But now, the place is under heavy surveillance. I can't go in alone. I need your help. There was silence on the line. Then, Chika's voice came firm. You don't even have to ask. If it means catching the animals who killed my wife, I'm in. The next evening, Adora and Chika parked 2 streets away from the building. They moved quietly, sticking to the shadows. Adora had mapped a back entrance that led straight into the storage room where the box had been hidden. They reached the back door without being seen. Her heart raced as she pried it open with a small crowbar. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and the faint smell of cigarettes. They crept to the spot on the floor. Adora knelt, fingers shaking as she pulled up the floorboard. The hole was empty. She froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The box, the files, the proof, all gone. Chika's voice broke. No, this can't be happening. Adora sat back slowly, her eyes stinging with hot tears. The killers had been one step ahead. The proof was gone, and with it, the only chance to bring justice for the women. In the silence, Chika's voice came low and dangerous. They think they've won. But I swear to you, Adora, I will not stop until they pay. Outside, an engine roared to life. Adeora's blood ran cold. Someone else was in the building, and they weren't leaving without a fight. Adeora's hands were still on the empty floorboard. Gone. Everything was gone. Behind her, Chika stood still, as if trying to accept the crushing weight of it. His fists clenched, his eyes dark. This was not just a case to him anymore. It was blood. It was love. It was war. Then, clack, click, the sound of a gun cocking. Adora slowly looked up. 2 men stood at the hallway entrance, one bald, the other wearing dark shades even at night. Both held guns. Both had one target. Step away from the hole, one of them growled. Adora raised her hands slowly. We're just leaving. No, you're not, the other man said coldly. You've seen too much. They took a step forward. That's when Chika did something no one expected. He picked up the heavy crowbar beside the wall and swung it with all his strength, striking the gun from the bald man's hand. The weapon clattered to the ground. Adora didn't wait. She grabbed a broken stool leg and hit the other attacker in the knee. He howled and stumbled. They ran. Through the dusty corridor. Through the back door. Out into the street, panting, sweating, bleeding. Bullets followed them. One scraped Adeora's shoulder. Chika grabbed her arm. Keep running. They ducked into a nearby alley and kept moving until the sound of tires and shouts faded behind them. An hour later, they reached Adeora's car, parked far from the scene. She winced as Chika helped her clean her wound with tissue and bottled water. They sat in silence for a while, both overwhelmed. I was so sure we'd find it, she said softly. So sure we could prove it all. Chika shook his head slowly. We still can. We're still alive. That means the fight isn't over. Then, he paused. What's that? He asked. He reached into his pocket and pulled something out. A torn page, folded and crumpled. He must have grabbed it unknowingly while reaching for the floorboard earlier. Adora opened it slowly. It was a typed medical report, stamped with the name of a private fertility clinic. LifeBloom Center for Women, Lekki Phase 1. On the back was a handwritten note. Final procedure scheduled. Patient sedated. Transfer approved. And beneath that, a name. Client, Madam L. Washington, U.S. Adora and Chika looked at each other. This wasn't just local anymore. This was international. And if this clinic was involved, it meant more women were still at risk. More unborn babies were still being traded like cargo. Adeora's voice came low but full of fire. Tomorrow morning, we go to LifeBloom. The next morning, LifeBloom Center for Women stood tall and polished in Lekki Phase 1. Glass doors. Marble floors. Nurses in crisp white. It looked like the kind of place that promised safety, luxury, and miracle pregnancies. But Adora knew better. She could feel it in her bones. Beneath the glossy tiles, something dark was hidden. She and Chuka walked in, pretending to be a couple seeking treatment. Adora wore a fake baby bump. Chuka held her hand, playing the worried husband. Their story was simple. She had complications. They needed help, fast. The receptionist smiled warmly. "Welcome to LifeBloom. Please fill out this form. We'll have you meet with Dr. Io shortly." As they sat and waited, Adeora's eyes scanned the hallway. Everything was too perfect, too quiet. Then she noticed something strange. No children anywhere. No newborns. No babies crying. For a fertility clinic, the silence was chilling. Soon, a nurse in glasses came and called them. Inside Dr. Io's office, a tall, polished man with a fake smile welcomed them. He asked questions, took notes. Adora pretended to struggle to speak, pressing her stomach like she was in pain. Dr. Io's eyes lingered too long on her bump. Then he said something strange. "We offer special treatments for select clients. Private care. No interruptions. We have a restricted ward for that." Adora leaned forward. "Can I see it?" He laughed softly. "Oh no, madam. Only after full registration and payment. That ward is for advanced cases." Chuka forced a polite smile. "But we're willing to pay anything. Please. Let us see where our child will be cared for." The doctor's eyes narrowed. "I'm afraid that's not possible." Adora noticed his hand subtly press a button under the desk. Her heart skipped. They were being watched. That night, they returned. This time, through the back fence. Adora had found an old blueprint diagram online. There was a service door behind the garbage unit, forgotten and rarely locked. Inside, the building was quiet, dim, almost like a different world compared to the daytime. They crept down a narrow hallway, flashlight low. Then they saw it, a frosted glass door marked Ward 9, Restricted Access. Chika's hand trembled as he pushed it open. Inside was a hallway of locked rooms. The air was cold. Too cold. Then they heard it. A soft cry. Adora moved quickly toward the sound. Behind a half-open door was a dimly lit room, and on a metal bed lay a pregnant girl, not more than 17. She was pale. Weak. Wires were attached to her arms. A drip hung beside her. When she saw them, her lips trembled. "Please, help me," she whispered. Adora knelt beside her, tears burning her eyes. "What's your name?" "F," she whispered. "They took my sister last month. She never came back. They told me I'll be next after the baby comes." A choked sound escaped Chika's throat. He couldn't believe it. He had once imagined Ngozi might have been kept alive, like this girl. But no, she was gone. Now, someone else's daughter was next. Adora turned to him. "We're not leaving her here." Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights flashed. They had been discovered. The red lights flashed violently. Woo, woo, woo. The entire hospital echoed with the piercing sound of alarms. Adeora's heart thundered in her chest. Chika grabbed F's hand gently. "Can you walk?" The girl, weak from sedation, tried to sit up, but collapsed. "No," she whispered. "I'm too weak. Please, don't leave me." "We won't," Adora said firmly. "I promise, we'll get you out." Suddenly, heavy boots thudded down the hallway. Security was coming. Chika looked around, panicked. There was nowhere to hide. Then, a miracle. A woman in nurse uniform suddenly appeared at the door, eyes wide with fear. "What are you doing here?" she whispered urgently. Adora froze. She couldn't tell if the nurse was friend or foe. But before she could respond, the woman rushed in, locked the door, and turned to them. I saw you from the monitors. I know what's happening here. I've been documenting it for over a year. Adeora's eyes widened. Who are you? My name is Nurse Stella. I've seen women come in and never leave. Their babies taken. Records wiped. I've been too afraid to speak. But I can't watch it happen again. She quickly turned to a cabinet, pulled out a wheelchair and placed F in it. She handed Adora a nurse's jacket. Wear this. Push her. Look like staff. She handed Chika a white coat. You, doctor. Footsteps drew closer. The pounding in their ears matched their heartbeat. Stella opened a side door. This way. There's a staff elevator that leads to the basement. No cameras there. Without thinking, they followed her. They moved fast, but the moment they got to the basement, voices echoed above. She's not in the ward. Lock all exits. Search everywhere. F moaned softly in the wheelchair, but Adora whispered, Stay with me, baby. We almost out. They reached the staff exit door. It was locked. Stella cursed softly, digging into her pocket. I stole the spare key last week. Hold on. Click. The door opened into the night. They pushed F out first, then rushed across the parking lot toward the outer gate. Suddenly, bang! A gunshot rang through the air. The guard at the far end had spotted them. Chuka turned, shielding F with his body as the others ducked. Adora pulled her own service pistol and fired once in the air. The guard scrambled for cover. They jumped into Adeora's car parked nearby. Engine on. Tires screeched. They sped off. 20 minutes later, they were safe. Hidden in a small flat owned by Adeora's cousin. F lay on the couch, shivering, but alive. Chuka paced the floor, unable to calm down. Then Nurse Stella spoke. I have copies of some files. Names. Records. Photos. Hidden in a flash drive. I'll get it tomorrow. Adora turned to her, tears in her eyes. You just saved a life tonight. Stella shook her head slowly. No. I just finally stopped being afraid. But in a dark office, back at LifeBloom, Chief stood with his phone to his ear. His face was blank, cold, dangerous. He listened as his guard reported. They escaped, with one of the girls, and a staff nurse helped. Chief didn't raise his voice. He simply said, Find the girl, find the nurse, and make sure the next time Detective Adora moves, it's to her own grave. The next morning, Adora stood quietly by the window of the safe house. The city outside looked normal. Cars passing, people hurrying to work, a child laughing in the distance. But her heart was heavy, because underneath that normal, there was hell. F was sleeping peacefully on the couch, her fingers curled into the pillow. Stella sat beside her, brushing her hair gently like a mother who had once lost a child, and just found one again. Chuka entered the room, holding a flash drive. I collected it from Stella's apartment, he said. It has over 40 patient files. Names, dates, death reports, even videos. Adeora's hands trembled slightly as she held it. This was it. The smoking gun. Without wasting time, she headed to the station. She had to deliver it directly to Inspector Henry. Inside his office, Henry looked up from his desk and frowned when he saw her. Adora, you again. She placed the flash drive in front of him. Her voice was low but firm. This is evidence. Everything I told you. It's all inside. The clinic is running an international trafficking ring. They are harvesting babies, sedating women, killing them quietly. And some of our own men are helping cover it. Henry stared at the flash. Then slowly, he leaned back. How did you get this? We went undercover. We rescued a girl named F. She was going to be next. They have wards full of women they are keeping in silence. Henry said nothing. He picked up the flash, rolled it between his fingers, and stared at it like it was a toy. Adora's heart sank. So, he stood up and walked to the window. I hope you know what you're doing, he said quietly. Adora frowned. What do you mean? Henry turned slowly, his face now hard. You went into private property. You broke protocol. You endangered a civilian. You're risking your badge for stories you can't even prove in court. Adora stepped forward, voice rising. I have proof. That flash drive is a proof. Henry sighed, a long, tired sound. Then, without warning, he opened his desk drawer and dropped the flash drive inside. I'll review it, he said, dismissively. Now go home and let the system do its job. Adora stared at him, frozen. Her eyes burned. She couldn't speak. She knew. She knew right then. Henry was on their payroll. The silence. The delays. The indifference. It all made sense now. So, are you one of them? She whispered. Henry smiled. Not kindly. I'm an officer of the law. And you, Adora, are walking on thin ice. She left the office in a daze. Outside, Chuka was waiting. She didn't say a word. Just shook her head. The flash, he asked. She didn't answer. He cursed under his breath. They bought him too. Adora wiped her eyes. Then she said something he didn't expect. Then we go public. Back at the safe house, Adora stood in the middle of the room, breathing hard. Her mind was spinning. The one person she trusted, Inspector Henry, had betrayed her. The flash drive with all the evidence was now in enemy hands. She looked at Chuka, who was pacing like a lion in a cage. Stella sat with her head in her hands. F, fragile but awake, was watching quietly, scared, but listening. Adora clenched her fists. If they've bought the police, if they control the system, we expose them ourselves. Chuka turned. How? We go public. Social media. We show the world everything. Within an hour, Adora made calls. A trusted journalist. A popular Instagram influencer who believed in justice. A tech friend who could stream securely. But the real voice needed to be F's. At first, the girl was afraid. What if they find me? She whispered. What if they kill me too? Adora knelt in front of her, gently holding her hand. They've already tried. But you survived. And now, you have the power to stop them from doing this to anyone else. F looked at Chuka, the man who had lost his own wife to the same evil. He nodded. She wiped her tears and said, let's do it. That night, with lights dimmed and the room locked, a camera went live on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter simultaneously. F sat in a wheelchair, her face pale but strong. Hello, my name is F, she began, voice shaking slightly. I was kidnapped by people pretending to be from a fertility clinic in Lekki. They sedated me. I was meant to deliver my baby and die, just like my sister, Blessing, who disappeared last year. She paused, eyes wet. But some people risk their lives to save me. One of them is standing here with me, Chuka. He lost his wife the same way. Her name was Ngozi. She was 8 months pregnant when she disappeared. Then Chuka stepped forward. His voice cracked with pain. I've mourned my wife for months. I didn't know where she went. I didn't know she was murdered, and our child sold like property. He took a deep breath. This is not just my story. OFs. There are dozens of families crying, waiting, searching. And nobody is listening. He looked straight into the camera. So we're speaking. Loudly. Then Adora spoke briefly, exposing LifeBloom Clinic, the corrupt Inspector Henry, and the network of traffickers with names and images of some of the files they'd secretly backed up before the flash drive was stolen. We're not afraid anymore, she said, Her voice clear. We have nothing left to lose, but others still have their lives to live. Let's stop this now. Within minutes, the video spread like wildfire. #Justice for Ngozi. #Save Our Mothers. #LifeBloom Exposed. Became trending hashtags across Nigeria. Thousands shared it. Radio stations began picking it up. TV crews started calling. Even international journalists began reaching out. But Chief saw it too. Inside his black car, he watched the video on his phone. His jaw tightened. He threw the device across the dashboard. Find them, he told his driver. Tonight. End this. When the people cry loud enough, even the deaf in power will hear. The video had only been up for 3 hours, but it had already changed everything. Over 2 million views. Thousands of comments from families who had lost loved ones. People demanding names. Demanding justice. The internet had caught fire, and the flames had reached the very top. At the National Police Headquarters in Abuja, a red phone rang on the Inspector General's table. It was the presidency. Handle this mess. Now. The world is watching. Within minutes, emergency meetings were called. Names were mentioned. Files were pulled. And a storm was unleashed. By morning, arrest orders had been dispatched to units across Lagos. Special forces were mobilized quietly, men who couldn't be bribed. They were told, bring in everyone, even if it's a commissioner, even if it's a pastor. No sacred cows. The first man picked up was Dr. Io at LifeBloom Clinic. He was dragged from his bed in handcuffs, his mouth still trying to explain. But I'm just a doctor. I was following instructions. They didn't listen. At the same time, 2 unmarked vans surrounded Chief's mansion in Banana Island. He tried to escape through a hidden back route, but a sniper had already positioned himself. Get on your knees. Hands where we can see them. Chief didn't speak. He knew the game was over. Back at the safe house, Adora, Chuka, F, and Stella huddled around a radio. A breaking news report played. Over a dozen arrests have been made this morning following an explosive whistleblower video exposing a baby trafficking ring involving clinics, law enforcement, and foreign buyers. Detective Adora Oniima, the courageous officer who uncovered the network, is currently under protective custody while investigations proceed. Stella burst into tears. F just held her belly and whispered, "Blessing, we did it." Cheka stood quietly, a single tear rolling down his face. "Ngozi, they will never do this to anyone again. I swear." Adora sat still. Her body was exhausted. Her shoulders still throbbed from the bullet scrape. But her soul felt peace for the first time in months. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "This is just the beginning. They are more powerful than you know. Stay alert." She stared at it for a long moment. Then she deleted it, smiled, and turned back to her team. "We're not done. But we're not afraid anymore." Sometimes justice doesn't heal the wound, but it stops the bleeding for others. 3 months later, the courtroom was full. The air was tense, filled with reporters, grieving families, and human rights activists. Chief sat in the dock, his once perfect suit rumpled, his face pale. Dr. Io avoided every camera. Inspector Henry looked smaller than ever, stripped of his rank and dignity. The judge's voice was firm. "On the charges of human trafficking, murder, and conspiracy, you are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without parole." The room erupted, some in tears, some in applause. Adora sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just breathed. Because it was over. Outside the court, F hugged her tightly. "Thank you for saving me. For saving so many others." Chuka stood beside them, staring up at the sky. "I can't bring Ngozi back, but I can live knowing her story saved lives." Stella, now working with a women's shelter, added softly, Evil survives when good people keep quiet. I'm done keeping quiet. That night, Adora finally went home. For the first time in months, she slept without nightmares. In her dreams, she saw Ngozi, Aisha, Kimi, and Blessing, all smiling, free, holding their babies. Moral lessons. Silence helps evil grow. Speaking out can save lives. Corruption can wear a uniform. Always seek the truth, no matter who's involved. One voice can inspire millions. Courage is contagious. Justice may be slow, but persistence can force it to move. Trauma can birth heroes. Pain can become. The media is a weapon for truth. Use it wisely. Never underestimate the power of teamwork. Grief doesn't end, but fighting for others brings healing. Evil people fear the light, so keep shining it. Now to you, my viewers. If you were in Adora's shoes, would you have gone public, even knowing the danger? What would you do if you discovered someone you trusted, like Inspector Henry, was part of such evil? Do you believe social media is a stronger tool for justice than the legal system? Which character in this story inspired you the most, and why? What lesson from this story will you remember the most? If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that open your eyes and heal your soul. Until next time, stay strong, stay alert.